welcome to US Chess class. This is Grandmaster Magesh Panchanathan. As you can see, we're getting ready for some same color bishop endgame today. I guess we'll give it a minute for people to join in. Oh, I missed the norm tournament. Gosh, did you make a norm? Oh, okay. Where was this? Oh, nice, nice. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to work on some same color bishop endgame, this particular endgame, a very interesting one. Now, of course, it requires some basic understanding or basic knowledge on same color bishop endgame. I'm hoping that most of you have some basic ideas. Eric is already talking about some very straightforward ideas. By the way, the black pawn is going up. So this pawn is going this way. Just keep that in mind. If this pawn is going here, I think it should be much easier. So pawn's going up. Yeah. So what I am going to do is I'm going to, mostly I think we'll just discuss this. I don't think we'll be able to play it. I think we had something like that last time, right? I don't know, Kash, if it's possible, we can try it, but if not, we'll just do analysis. Okay, so it is black's turn to play. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to break this down and try to analyze this endgame as much as possible. And of course, what I would like to first know is in a minute, I'll give you 1 minute. And oh yeah, Kostya, that's okay, no problem. Right, I think the classroom has some bugs and it's slow a little bit, so I don't want to take a chance today. We'll just stick to screen sharing. So what I want is in the first 1 minute, I want everyone to type in chat if this is a win or a draw. So this is more like, what is your gut feeling about this position? You know, Roger has already given me something. By the way, I mentioned this in all my classes these days. Remember this, try to calculate as many things as genuine as possible, right? Using engine or any other assistance is not going to help you or not going to help anyone else. So let's just try to, whatever you stumble in your calculation, you figure it out as you go through, you will still learn a lot, okay? All right, so interesting. I'm getting a bunch of wins and draws. So maybe more wins than draw, I would say, yeah. I got a few draws, but mostly win. Remember this is only an intuitive decision. I'm not going to force you to stick to it. Obviously, after calculations, we can change. Okay, so Joshua is giving me a reason and why it could be a win. Kelsey says draw. Okay, very good. So as long as all of you have given me a decision, this is just for yourself. Okay. Now, we're going to do some work through the end game to figure out what exactly is the actual result. Yeah. Now, I see some variations. Just keep one thing in mind. Nothing is final, right? When a position like this is given to me, or when I'm looking at it, it takes a while before I can give any of my final judgment. So it's something that I want all of you to remember. Don't say it's a win or a draw because I calculated it. No, right? There is plenty of stuff going on. You've intuitively picked a result, which is absolutely fine. But now to make a final conclusion, I want you to be very, very thorough on this, because you can easily calculate a lot of things in this position, right? So let's talk about the first step. I think we can go stage by stage. Yeah. So obviously the pawn is going up. That means there are a lot of squares for the black pawn to go through, but there are only two main squares for me to look at. What are the squares I really have to pay attention to as black? Correct, only two squares. It is not. So I think, Roger, I realized what you meant when you initially said it. Not C4. No, definitely not C4. I mean, in the pawn, the pawn is queening this way, and I'm only interested in these two squares, yeah? Because these two squares are when I can get blocked. All other squares are dark squares. I can easily go through, right? And one more thing I notice is that this king is kind of blocked. I mean, like, okay, let's go to the red. So all of this is blocked. So it's not easy for the king to really walk in and defend. So I'm not too worried about that, right? Yes, the king is shouldered. And also, it's not like I can go here because you can just follow me there and block me still. So the king doesn't seem to have any path to E1. So that's a good idea a good thing for black. Now, let's think about this. Which square am I really, really worried about? Okay, I think everyone is giving me a most direct answer. Obviously, it's E2 because it's black's turn to play right now. And if you play E5, I don't see how white can stop E4. So you can probably walk all the way up to E3. And the question is all going to be on E2. Yeah. Now we're going to use the chat and I'm going to ask you to go step by step, one step at a time. So once the pawn is on E3, what is the first step or first thing that you can do to try to win the game? And we're going to, of course, every step of the way, find a defense. Narayan, type it in private chat. I see you're typing it to everyone. Roger, I can't go to C4, right? Because C4 is defended by the king. White king is defending C4. Can't get there, yeah? You meant later, okay? So most of you have a very straightforward way to try to win the game. You push the pawn to E3 and then you put your bishop on D3. And who can tell me what is white's defense? Obviously. So this is not going to be such an easy win off, of course. It'll be nice if you can push pawn to E3 and white does nothing and you go bishop E4, bishop D3 and you win, yeah. Okay, I'm going to change it to just host and co-host. So you'll have to only chat with us. In the end, we'll open it. Okay, so black pushes the pawn to E3 and then tries to go to block on D3. Now, white, of course, is going to play bishop E2, like most of you are mentioning it in chat. What are the next steps? So how is black going to make progress then? Again, put it in chat. I want to see step by step, like how are you really going to try to make progress? Now, after a point, I'll make some moves on the board, but it's fun for me to make you visualize. I think it's a good habit in general also. In some positions, it's not really required. Like in this position, you can, for example, push the pawn to E3, which is kind of obvious. Except some of you have this idea of not pushing the pawn to E3 and trying to get your king around. If that's the case, we probably want to also hold back on pushing the pawn up. So yes, Olivia, bishop E4, bishop D3 is a black's winning plan after the pawn goes to E3. But white wants to go bishop to E2. And at that point, if you go to D3, I can switch it. So the most common or most important point of a same color bishop diagonal is that there are two diagonals. And there is one common square that's a switching square, which is usually in front of the pawn, right? So I will keep switching diagonals as long as that is possible for me. Every time you try to challenge me. So when you go bishop E4, bishop D3, I'm going to go there. And when you go bishop D3, I'm going to switch to the other diagonal. So let's see who has the next. Okay, so Roger, can you give me some precise ways to do it? Exactly. So the pawn goes to E3. Assume the pawn is on E3. And now think of variation. So one of the things I want all of you to remember is that in your mind, you have to think between conceptual ideas and actual variations. For example, here, I would not calculate variations, right? I play E5. Does it really matter whether the bishop goes to B5 or E2 or F1? Does it really matter to me? No, right? Raya, you're right. I will calculate only after the pawn gets to E3. At that point, it may be important where the bishop is, where the pieces are. So I'll have to. So when the pawn goes to E3, now I will say, okay, let me switch to precise moves. How is black trying to win here? So, Ryo, at that point, I want you to be a little bit more precise to say, is that plan winning? Okay, Roger, you've given me an explanation. Let me try to understand. H5. After bishop H5, you want to go bishop A6, okay. Bishop E4 and D3. Okay, so I see that you have a certain plan, but I want you to start with one plan at a time, right? I want to build this incrementally for all of you. Again, this is a very, very fascinating endgame. I recently came across this and I really liked it, right? So, and I think when I set this up, when I saw this endgame, it's actually from a game. White is player is a 2000, like 1999 to be precise, and black is a 2179. And this game had so many blunders between them, but it's only because the concept was not understood. So the end game is quite fascinating. So we'll go step by step, right? So the step we are in is right now the black pawn has gone to E3 and white bishop is going to go to E2. To solve that problem, what should black do? Roger, you suggested that step. I want that to be executed. So some of you are going king E5 or king E4 and then king F4 and king G3 and king F2. Very interesting. I think Ryo and Rohan, you want to try to go to the other side. So Austin has given me a very clear path to the next step. I think Narayan, you gave me close enough, but it was not super obvious. But let's see. Angela. Since the board is upside down, I'm super confused. Okay, I love to register the coordinates also. Okay, so I'm not so sure how you ended up playing bishop e2 after that. There's a bishop on g4 and b3. How did that happen? Okay. All right. I might also take it to a simpler endgame very quickly. Let me see. Hold on one second. I know most of you are trying to do this, so let me quickly address that. Okay, let me quickly go to this one. All right, I'm changing the position very quickly because I think a lot of you are addressing this kind of an idea. I just want to make sure that this is exactly what we're talking about. So is this a win or a draw? White to play. Okay, Narayan, Roger have given me a conclusive answer. The rest of you? Roger, that's actually very good. Okay, so I see some of you are saying win, some of you are saying it's a draw. Again, try to give a conclusive answer so we can hold you. I mean, it's not that want to hold you, you should hold yourself, right? Once you put that result out, then you can say, oh, you know what, did I make it right or no? If you keep that in your head and didn't write it down, it won't be the same. So all of you type in, what do you think? Win or draw? Let's go. Eric, you're precise. That's very good. Aryan wants to make sure that I've noticed the caps lock. Okay, I have. Okay, guys, this is a very simple win. Some of you think it's a draw, so I'm glad I actually show this, because this is, the most common type of maneuver is to do this. And I want you to remember that this is the most usual kind of diamond kind of bishop maneuver. In this case, it's not exactly in that shape, but the idea is very simple. There are two diagonals, like I mentioned, right? And every single time you look at this, I want you to just look at your king to decide which diagonal is good for you. So the defending bishop, in which diagonal can be blocked easily. So in this case, it has to be this diagonal, because this square is defended by the king. So what essentially we're saying is, we're saying this bishop needs to be on the other diagonal. And the good news is, anytime you put the challenge in front of the pawn, you get to pick the diagonal. You get to go whichever side you want, right? So in this case, you pick this side and force the king to bishop to go that side, and then you can go here and simply block. An easy win for white, right? And so, like I said, it's a very typical maneuver. In this case, it's more like this, but the idea is still the same. You start from a square, you kind of go around and you come back, right? Should be an easy win. What if I give you a free move? Still a win or a draw? Will one move matter? Someone thought it did. Let's see how everyone thinks about this. Eric and Roger, good. Eric Liu and Roger, good. Narayan saying yes. Joshua, yes. Draw. Again, this is all very important. Ryo, yes. Actually, there is bishop g6, Austin. You cannot take the king. I could play bishop g6 if I want to, but I don't think that is the reason. Angela, I don't think that's the reason. So Austin, May, and Angela, you're giving me a draw, but it's not because of that move, right? So the idea is, remember, this square is the only reason why it's winning. You take away that square. You go king e5, king d6, and it's going to be a forced draw. And you play, let's say, king e5, they'll play bishop e8. Let's say you move the bishop. Bishop goes here, you go bishop here. And just when bishop is ready to go to d7, you just take that square away. Now, you really don't care which diagonal you're going to be in, because his king is neutralized by your king. And it's just a draw, right? The only square, the real challenge can happen is in front of the pawn, but you'll keep switching diagonals. So it should be a pretty straightforward draw, right? So remember this is like the basic bishop in-game stuff, and everybody should know this, right? You can decide which diagonal the defending bishop can be in, so you can kind of manipulate that bishop and then use your king to block. The same way black is, or the defending side is going to try to take away that key square which you're using to block, to make or guarantee a draw, right? Okay, so with that, let's go back to the position we were looking at, right? And I'm going to play the first few moves, because I'll play e5, bishop e2, e4, bishop f1, and e3. So I'll play up until this point. It's white's turn. White can play any move here. Doesn't really matter. But we're going to calculate from here, because I think pawn moving to e3 was straightforward. Like I said, some of you wanted to try king e3 ideas. Obviously, here king e3 is an immediate blunder because of bishop g2. But in general, it's not going to help you as much. You want to push the pawn as soon as possible. Very rarely that will come in handy. Okay, now, I got only one person to give me a clear plan, right? So to block the bishop and win the game, the first thing is you need to guard the switching square. So your king either needs to be on f2 or on d2. Without achieving that, it's not possible to win, because the white bishop will keep switching diagonals, yeah? Like I talked about. So how do I get my king to d2, and how can white create some problems for black? That's the first question, right? It's white's turn in this position, by the way. I can put my bishop anywhere in the diagonal. So let's assume, actually, I'm going to start. I'm going to assume by playing bishop e2, yeah? I'll play this, yeah? Now, give me some variation, people. Now I would like a little bit more precise variation. How are you going to make the first step happen? Either take your king to f2 or take your king to d2. Figure out which one is better and then tell me how you're going to do it. After that, we'll figure out the next steps. So I think white could have done better, Rohan. I'm seeing a variation. I think white could have done better. So you kind of saw a winning plan and you also kind of saw a drawing plan. So I want you to keep those two in mind and see where white could have done better. So Roger is giving me something. So Roger, I want you to think about what white can do about it. Austin May, you're right. That is the most annoying variation. I think you're the first one to see what the problem in this plan is. Everyone else is talking about what black's idea to get the king up is, but there is a problem. Yes, you're correct in the next step, but I don't think you need to go to that square, yeah? You can go anywhere, actually, if you think about it. In that variation, you can go anywhere. So Narayan, think about it. The only reason your variation worked is because of my poor king placement, I think. So I want to see if, sorry, not king placement, my poor bishop placement. White's bishop was placed very poorly in your variation that you just gave me. Exactly, Roger. That's right. That's exactly what my defense is. By the way, I see a lot of you still. I don't see that many answers. Keep participating. I can give you or direct you in something when you do that. So the point is, black wants to play king d2, but the d3 square is being blocked. So you need to, I mean, you cannot clear c3. The white king is controlling it. So your only path is through d3. You have to figure out a way to get this bishop out of this diagonal to play d3. Yeah. That's not so too difficult, actually, right? Because if you go bishop e4, bishop d3, this bishop will automatically get out of the diagonal. And then you need to clear your bishop out of there to go d3 and d2. That seems like a very straightforward plan. The only problem is, I think by now most of you have noticed what the problem is. What is the problem after bishop e4? That's right. I think everyone is kind of giving the idea. I'm simply going to play king b3. And by the time you play bishop d3, and let's say move the bishop out, now the first problem is if you go back in this diagonal, I'll come back to e2. If you go to this diagonal, then I might go to c2. So Narayan, in your variation, you put the bishop on d1, which is a little unfortunate, right? I'm not going to do that. I'll probably put it on h5, g4, or something like this. And that's the problem, yeah? Okay, so let's go. Now, my question is, how are you going to get your king to do e2 first? This is the first problem. It's an easy solution, by the way, very easy. Austin May is the one who kind of... Actually, Austin May, after your move, don't I get another tempo? So, Anika, that's fair enough. You can play that, but I want you to think about what white will play. Obviously, white has some moves. What will white play? Angela, what if I attack your bishop after that move? Oh, actually, I cannot do that, yeah? Because you will easily walk in. Fair enough, fair enough. I was thinking, a lot of you are suggesting bishop a2, and I was thinking if I can play king a3, but you have bishop c4 immediately. Fair enough. Okay, very good. So bishop a2 is being suggested. By the way, guys, you don't need to go anywhere very specific. All you have to do is waste a move. You can go anywhere you want. I don't know why you are complicating it. So the only thing is when you go bishop e4, right? The bishop is in the perfect square to switch diagonals, right? And white doesn't have to waste anything, right? All you have to do is make that bishop go to not so perfect square. You wait. Now what can he do? He has to move the bishop, right? Because if he moves the king goes in, right? Well, of course, we'll figure out some other options, but the thing is the bishop, if the bishop moves, when the bishop moves to, let's say, I'll move, let's say, bishop h5. Well, if I go to this diagonal, I think you can move the king in directly. Let's try bishop f1. And now you'll play bishop here. Now the thing is I cannot play king b3 because bishop d3 is immediately winning. So the only move I have to do is go bishop e2. I have to go to that square, so I'm ready to switch. So in this case, you have stole a move from me, yeah? Where you go bishop d3, and I go somewhere in this diagonal. And now you can easily move out of this diagonal. And if I go king b3, you get king d3 and you get king b2, right? So bishop f7, where are you playing bishop f7? So bishop e6 is the position. When are you playing bishop f7? But bishop e6, bishop f7 are the same here, Raya. What's the difference? You want to play king e5, king f4 ideas. Okay. You can definitely do that. If that is one of the main ideas that you have, you can focus on that. Yeah. And you can try to gain tempo by putting the bishop on g4 or on d3. Absolutely possible. But my next question now is, you all know a drawing method. By now, we have talked about it. We have seen it. You all know a drawing method, right? You don't even need to calculate for this. Let's conceptually think about it, right? When black tries to achieve this winning plan, where should the white king be to make a draw? So everybody knows that now, yeah? Roman, I cannot achieve e1. E1 is more of a dream square. Angela, same thing. If I go to e2, e1, Narayan, that's all dream square. I cannot reach there. This would be an awesome square. If I reach it, you can sign the draw. I'm not reaching there. We talked about this. The king is already shouldered, never getting there. Anywhere on the side is not useful, guys. Remember, we talked about this. When the king is on d2, you want the king on d4. Behind. This is the only endgame where the opposition kind of happens behind the king. Right? The biggest mistake I've seen people do is kind of walk side by side. This king advances and you kind of go side by side, you're making no progress. You'll simply lose the game without any kind of defense. So when the king goes to d2, you want to be somewhere on d4. That's the goal, right? We want to go behind and stop it. So now let's do the math. I mean, some of you want to go here. Where should I be when the king goes to f2? If white needs to make a draw or guarantee a draw. f4 it is. Yeah. So the point is I'm 2 moves behind you because of this kind of situation. I'm 1-2 moves behind you or 1-2 moves behind you, correct? So mathematically, can I reach and make a draw? How many moves, for example, from here, it will take you to go to d2? 2 moves. And it will take me 2 moves to come to d4, right? So whenever you go to d2, if I can go to d4, most likely when you end up on f2, I can probably reach on f4 too. But I think Rayo had some ideas to try to gain some tempo, which is possible, yes. But black can try to cut off the white king with the bishop. You cannot do that, Austin May, because the problem is I will walk in dark squares. You can only guard white squares. White can always wait as much as you want, but when you get to d2, I'm going to get to d4. So I'm going to ask the first question, right? I still see some of you trying to go this side. So let's make that call first. Are we trying to go to f2 or are we trying to go to d2? Because we have a lot of planning coming around and we need to play or prepare our ideas around that. Fair enough. Roger is saying let's do d2 first. And if it doesn't work, then let's think about f2. Okay, so everyone is given to me d2. Austin may f2 because we gain a tempo. We're attacking the bishop on g4 or h5. Okay. Actually, you know what? I realized you won't gain a tempo. Let's do this. Yeah. Let's play bishop over here, king here. Who can tell me why black will not gain a tempo? So black wants to go king f4 and hit the bishop. But I don't think black is gaining any tempo. Exactly, Austin May. I will play either king c3 or king c5, doesn't really matter. And when you go king here, I will play king here, and you're actually not threatening my bishop. Exactly. So this is still not actually a tempo. Yeah, king c5 or king c3 would be similar. Yeah. So let's stick to what Roger suggested. I think that's a kind of an idea you should always follow, right? Why not calculate d2 first? Let's try to figure out d2. Only if really d2 doesn't work, you need to go around like this. Yeah, it's like a complete roundabout path. We don't need to worry about it. Okay, so you want to go bishop e6, and when the bishop moves, you go there. But the problem is, when you go to d2, the white king is going to try to get to d4. So this is the first problem, the serious problem we are facing. How can we handle this? Is there any idea for black to try to handle this? Sometimes you stumble upon some endgames and it's really fascinating. This one is one of those. So, Narayan, you're telling me one move. I'm not so sure what this one move means. Okay, first move, bishop e6, bishop f7. It's all okay. We have decided that, right? Because we kind of waste a move. Once the bishop moves out of there, you will go the bishop around to d3. And then you will force the bishop to this diagonal and you will play bishop f1, and you can then play king d3, king d2. But the only problem is when you go king d3, king d2, I'm going to play king c5 and king d4. This is what we know. Roger, that's right. White will wait until black moves the king. When black goes king d3, I'll play king c5. When black plays king d2, I'll play king d4. By the way, this position is a theoretical draw. I'll tell you that much. Once you reach that, it's a draw. There is no more calculation. We don't have to worry about it. Put the black king on d2, put the white king on d4. Obviously, the bishop is not on e2. Somewhere guarding the pawn, like the queening square. That is a theoretical draw. Just letting you know. Take the bishop where, Narayan? Are you talking about taking the bishop on e2? Well, assume the bishop is somewhere else. See, one thing is very clear. We have established that your bishop can now go to f1. Again, these you just use your imagination. I'm not moving the pieces because I want you to use your imagination to think about this. A lot of times what happens in such endgames is you guys play, and try to figure out as you play, right? I mean, this is just one piece. I don't think you need to move the pieces. I think you should be able to visualize and understand what is going on. So this bishop is on f1. Let's say this bishop is somewhere over here. This is what we can achieve. And now the king is ready to move in, but of course, this king is ready to come for a draw. That's where we are. Let's see who can come up with an idea. Of course, at some point, I'll give you a clue if you're not able to exactly come up with a very precise idea. But try a few things. What I would say is try a few things. Try any possible way to get your king to d2 and not, of course, allow my king to go to d4. Austin May, very good. I like how you're thinking. Well, yeah, I mean, where is your king? Where is your king, Austin May? Where is the black king when you're asking this? Aryan, are you talking about move one here? Well, in this position, we decided bishop b4 doesn't work. If you play bishop b4, I'll play king b3. We already looked at it a while ago. So black has to wait here and move the bishop around. I will play the bishop f1 situation maybe in a couple of minutes if nobody can come up with that yet. No, but it doesn't make sense. Look at where your king is and where you're going. So bishop cannot be there. You'll be in check. So Aryan, to bring you up to speed, right now we're focusing on getting the black king to d2. But while we want to get the black king to d2, we want to stop the white king from getting to d4. Roger has already jumped ships. Now he wants to go to f2. It's like giving up on d2. Let me actually play this part out, yeah? So let's play bishop e6. And I will bring the bishop to this side for you guys. And let's see if that is helping a little bit in our thinking. So, okay, this much is established, right? So we kind of talked about how the white, I mean, if you go king here, white king should not go around here. We talked about the white king coming back to d4. So I'm going to tell you this much. This is the winning endgame for black. You're right, but Austin, you had the right thought process. You started in the right direction. Austin May. All right, rest of you, come on, give me some ideas that you have. The key is to try to explore some options. Then, of course, we can see which one works, which doesn't work. Just try a few ideas, right? How do you reach d2 without white king reaching d4? What scenarios? Use your imagination. It is black to play here, Narayan, but doesn't really matter, does it? If it's white's turn to play, what's going to change? White is probably going to wait. Rohan, that's a drawn in game. So just to let all of you know, king d3, king c5. Wait, actually it was white's turn. So let's say play this king d3, king c5, king d2, king d4 is a theoretically drawn position. At this point, we can stop calculating. If we reach this, this is a draw. Okay, and then what? Very good. Very good. Progress. But how are you going to make this work? So now we have an idea, Austin May. How are you going to make it work? Owen wants to try bishop c4. Okay, fair enough, Owen. What do you do after that? I see so far only one person has made progress to an idea. Okay, fair enough. Owen, you're also kind of stopping me from reaching d4 yet, but where's your progress? What are you doing next? Because when you move your king, now I'm still going to move my king. You put me on like hold. Bishop g4, king d3, king c5, king e4. Okay, then let's say I still wait, Rohan. Yeah, Nika, I think the king is already on d4. Okay, Anika, king d3, I'm going to play king c5. So let's talk about the first clue, right? I think Austin May. Let's see, Austin May, can you tell us what your thought is?
We have to beat king c5 with king c3 to stop king d4. And then, because the king on c3, it has access to b2 and at the same time stops king d4. And then we have to wait until white moves bishop to e2 so we can play king d2 with tempo to not allow king c5.
Very nice, very nice. So just to, again, kind of reiterate what he mentioned is that he wants to play king d2 with a tempo. So white doesn't get king d4. So you kind of get to c3, c5 situation, fair enough, right? And he wants to play king d2 with a tempo when the bishop is on e2. Then you are achieving that because white will not allow king d4. But again, your window is very narrow. You have one move to kick that bishop and then challenge immediately. If you don't challenge, this king will reach d4. So there are two problems. First problem is, how are you going to make my bishop go to e2? Let's see who can achieve this. So at least now we have a plan. We have a possibility, right? King d2 with a tempo will win the game for you, or at least will take it closer for you. Anika, fair enough, you can do that. But I will move my bishop and switch diagonals. I always get to switch diagonals when you challenge me there. Conceptually, you can get this answer, people. Think about this. When will the defending bishop be forced to go to the switching square? It already happened in our variation early on. You guys don't have to tell me a move or a variation. You can tell me an idea. When will a defending bishop be forced to go to the switching square? Rohan, you're right. You're forcing that at that point, but your king is completely on the other side. Yeah. Also, when you play king e4, I'll play king c5 still. When you play king f4, I'll play king d4. Angela, very good. Roger, very good. When you are ready to challenge the bishop in one of the diagonals, whichever diagonal that bishop is, you're ready to challenge it, that bishop has to go running to the switching square. So now what I want you to do is try to visualize the winning position. I want you to put your king on c3. I want you to put the white king on c5. Now I want you to try to visualize a position where you will challenge that bishop, force the bishop to go to e2, play king d2 and win the game. What is that position? Let's see if you guys can visualize it and let me know. But Anika, once you play king d2, I'll play king d4, and that's a drawn position already. Yeah. Raya, you're right. Again, conceptually, anytime you try to challenge me in a diagonal, I have to go bishop e2. But now I'm asking an imagination question for all of you. Okay. Your king is on c3, my king is on c5. I want you to visualize a board where the black bishop and the white bishop are at a certain point where you will win. Just tell me the position. You don't need no variations right now. Because you can construct it very easily once you know the winning position. So use your imagination. Put the bishops anywhere you like. Jenny, you're doing really well. You came very, very close, but I want you to finish that variation and see if you're winning, Jenny. Jenny Zhu. Black bishop on g2, black king on c3, white bishop on e2, and white king on c5. Angela, are you sure that's win? Because remember this, when you play king d2, you get a tempo. I agree. But after king d2, my bishop will move somewhere. And now I'm threatening king d4. Unless you have an immediate win there, I feel like you're still not winning the game, right? Ryo, very nice. That's a winning position. I agree. Make it work. Make it work. Now you have a winning position. Black king on e4, white king on b4, white bishop on h5, Black bishop on f3. Oh, well, this is too much though, Rohan. You cannot achieve this. This is wishful thinking, right? See, if you want to challenge me on f3 with the king on e4, of course, that's an easy win. But I will obviously go to bishop e2. So that won't work. I mean, you have to. My point, like I said, is king c3, king c5. Okay, I'm going to ask this very one step at a time. Okay. Now, your king is on c3, right? Let me ask a more direct question. Do you want the white bishop to be in this diagonal, which is h5 to d1, or a6 to f1? Where can you block it easily? Think about it and tell me. In which diagonal do you have higher chances to block it? So it's obvious. Everyone is instantly answering this, yeah? It makes a lot of sense because you want the bishop to be on this diagonal. Because if your king is on c3, you have control to d3 and to c4, but you have no control on any square on this diagonal, okay? So first idea is, of course, we want the defending bishop to be on a6 to f1 diagonal, yeah? Correct. Then we are challenging on d3 and c4. But the problem is c4 is gone. The white king will be on b4 or white king will be on c5. So c4 is just gone. We cannot do that. But d3 is a possible square, right? Okay. So now we have established the first idea. We want the bishop to be in the other diagonal. Okay. Who can achieve that? Very easy. Let's see in chat. You don't want to go to d2 yet. You want to go to c3, but you have to switch diagonals now. The funny thing is you just made me switch diagonals so you can go to d3. But after you go to d3, now you want to make switch again. How will you do this? You can get bishop e2 after bishop d3. Yes, correct. But Angela, that's what you want. You want the white bishop to go to e2 so you can gain tempo. Remember that? That's one of the goals. King d3, bishop e2. That's correct, Roy. Bishop e8, bishop b5. How was that helping? Bishop e8, bishop e5. Well, I can go bishop e8. Evan. Bishop e4, bishop e7, king d2. I'm not so sure. Jenny, I think your notation went a little bit. Okay, the simplest thing in the first two moves has been given. And Narayan, you're again, we're getting very close. So everyone's making more progress right now. So I'll go king d3. Okay, let's say I wait, you go king d3. Now, if you go king c3, you cannot switch diagonal. So the first thing you have to do is bishop e2, right? And every time you do bishop e2, I have to move the bishop and I have to switch diagonals, right? So bishop has to go somewhere here. Now you can go king c3. Because now remember this, you have put yourself in such a situation that you get to pick my diagonal, right? So this is very easy execution, yeah? I'm not going to move the piece. I'm going to go back again just for fun. I'm going to make you imagine. Now, the next question is, how will you win? So if you threaten to go to d3, I'll have to go to e2, then you can play king d2. So Roger wants to go bishop h5, bishop g6, and then white is forced to go to e2. Where? Oh, yeah. You want to go bishop on g6. Okay, fair enough, Roger. Let's imagine that position. Bishop is on g6, and you're threatening to go to d3. So I'm going to go bishop e2. How will you win that one? Let's think about it. What will happen after that? So Jenny, now I see a variation. How are you winning though? You're not winning. And I'm one move away from king d4. Good, Austin. Now you have the idea. So when you play king d2, I'm going to ask another very simple conceptual question, right? So visualizing, king is on d2, white bishop is on e2. So the bishop is going to go to either diagonal and white king will have only one move. So one move behind, I can reach d4, very next move. So you want to immediately challenge. So I'm going to ask this very direct question. White bishop might be here or here. What are the challenging squares? In h5 to d1, what square would you trade off the bishop in? If the bishop is on h5 to d1, where do we trade off? Not on e2. E2 is blocking the pawn. You cannot do that. Your king is on d2. d1. Very good, right? What square would you do when the bishop is on a6 to f1? d3. Now, where should the black bishop be to be ready to go to both these squares? With 3 exclamation points, c2. Well, if you're on e2, you're blocking your own bishop. You have to be on c2. Yeah? We have done all the hard work. Are you ready to see the win? You're like, enough. Let's see it. Joshua's like, no. All right, let's watch this. King d3, king f4, bishop e2. Right? Now I have to move back and you go king c3. So now the win is actually quite easy. I have to just wait. I'm not doing much, right? Now you simply go bishop d1, bishop a6 is the only move, and bishop c2, and now the game is over. But this position, some of you got with g6, some of you got with e4. Like, for example, here, Jenny, you tried this move. Again, you got half, almost. I have to go bishop e2. But when you go here, now I'll go to this diagonal. And all I needed is one move. You go bishop c2, now I go king d4 draw. Right? So this is already unfortunate. You cannot do that. So the key move is bishop to d1. And when I go here, bishop to c2. Now the only move to stop bishop d3 is bishop e2. And you go king d2 and it's game over. Austin May is saying somehow we have spent 1 hour analyzing a 5-piece endgame. That's right. Endgames are fascinating. Yeah. So now whichever way I go, you block. But we are not done though. So let me go back here and let's ask you a question very early on. There's a reason why I don't move the pieces early on, because if you didn't figure this out as white, you will not be able to defend it. All right, you're playing white. You know black has a winning plan, bishop e6. Can you make a draw? Because this position is a draw. If anyone guessed it's a draw very early on, you got it right. You're not happy. I made you work through this and find a win. And now I'm making you work through this to find a draw. Well, obviously you cannot find a defense if you don't know what you're even trying to defend against. So yes, Austin, man, unfortunately that's how it works, because you're not going to be able to defend anything if you don't know what you're defending against. Now you know what black is going to do to win the game. You know exactly what black's plan is. You can easily defend it now. Actually, I think the defense is very easy. Because white just has a king and bishop. You'll have to do something with a king or something with your bishop. Let's see who has any ideas. So bishop f3 and bishop d1, Rohan. Doesn't help if you play bishop f3, right? I'm going to follow the same plan. I'll go bishop c4. I'll go bishop f1. Play king d3. Play bishop e2. All the same ideas. Olivia wants to play king b5. Confusion, insert Joshua. Good job, Olivia. We have the answer, yeah? Start running right now. Angela is not convinced. Well, you have to find your way around. When you were on f4, sorry, when you were on c5, king c3 was a problem. But if you are on e5, king c3 would not be a problem. So you have to just find your way around. So the better position for the king is actually here. So, or to be more precise, here. That way, if the black king is either of these squares, you can go to either of these squares to defend. Right? So staying on one side is not the most optimal defense, yeah? So king b5, let's say I play bishop f5. I want to go bishop d3. You go king f3. I play bishop d3. Bishop goes and you go bishop f1. And now look at this. I'm on time to go to d6. Now what's the difference? Okay, you play king d3. I play king e5. Now let's say you try the same. You play this. I move over. And you cannot play this anymore because I'll simply attack your pawn. I'm close enough. Force you to go to d2 and then I'll go here. And I got myself a draw. Only because the white king reached e5. Right? Does it make sense? Yeah? So the king has to walk around and put yourself in the best position on e5 to make a draw. Now remember this, it will look like you understood a bunch of things right now. If you don't review it, if you don't look through this again, if you don't study this endgame again, you're definitely not going to remember it. You will mostly end up in a game where you will have this feeling like, I have seen this somewhere. This is an interesting position. I remember that part. There are some interesting ideas. It's not going to help you in a practical game. So what I would recommend is go over it in a week's time. Go over it again, maybe in 6 months or so. Most of the end games that I've studied, it typically takes 2 or 3 iterations for me to really understand what's going on. Yeah. So now I'll show you the game, the fun part, right? So now let's see the game on what happened. So in the game, bishop e6 was played. In fact, black did mostly brilliant play. Later it became a problem. So bishop h5 was played. Now bishop c4. So here black is achieving his plan very beautifully. Bishop f1, just like we talked about. So white missed the draw. White did not bring the king around. So right now white's position is lost. King d3, king c5, and bishop e2. So just like black had planned, everything was done. Bishop g6 check. Again, king c3. Beautiful move. Black played all of this in the game. Bishop e8, right? And here starts the fun thing. So what's the winning move here? Let's see how many of you are still awake. Joshua was like, not me. Austin, Tang, Angela, Roger, Austin, May. Narayan, no. Zoe's awake. Okay. Evan, Royal, good. Bishop d1 is the winning move, because when you switch me to b5, you go to bishop c2. Yeah. So here starts a blunder fest. I think in this game there was like 7 or 9 blunders. Okay, so black plays bishop f3. This is not correct. After bishop b5. Now, still the same idea wins. If I go bishop d1 and bishop c2, I'm still winning. Bishop e4 is a draw, yeah? Unfortunately, that's what was played in the game. Blunder. Why? Now, white bishop can go back to this diagonal and there is no more switching. You don't get to switch, right? Watch this. If I go bishop over here, now to switch, you need to get to e2, which means you need to go to d3, right? So let's say you go bishop over here. Now the problem is you gave me that time that I didn't have before to make that king d4 maneuver, right? If I simply wait, yes, you can recreate the same position again like this, but I won't wait, yeah? So when you go bishop f1, I'll play this. When you play this, I'll go here. And now I have a draw. So the first blunder, bishop to b5. White goes back to the wrong diagonal, allowing black to do the same plan. Bishop f3, bishop d1 wins. Black blunders again, allowing white to switch diagonals again. So somebody can keep track of the blunder number, okay? White blunders again, allowing black to go bishop f3. So the whole concept is they're not understanding the diagonals, and I'm not going to blame them. If I had played this before analyzing this endgame, I would have probably done the same exact kind of blunders. White again blunders, allowing bishop e2 and to switch this diagonal. They're kind of blundering back and forth because they're not going after the diagonal. I'll tell you, there's a tragic end to this. So bishop e4 again for another blunder. Finally, white decides to switch diagonals. So white's like, enough is enough. I'm switching diagonals. So now king d4 happens and it's a draw. But black decides to prolong it. He comes back. But now the white bishop is in this diagonal. There is no way for black to chase it out. So, and also white finds the right idea. He brings the king to e5 as well, right? So everything is set for white to make a draw. And here he plays the final blunder of the game, bishop check. That's kind of tragic because we were all wondering how to play king d2 with a tempo, and white handed it over in a platter. Exactly. It's a free move. When king d2 would be played, white is supposed to play king d4. Obviously, bishop f5 check. Now king goes in. And also look at how convenient. Black's bishop is in a perfect square when white decides to make a blunder like this. Bishop went back, bishop d1, and black won the game. So again, very, very interesting. I mean, a lot of blunders, but all blunders were related to the same thing. By the way, Angela, you counted 8 blunders. There was one way before. Remember, king should come around, king b5, that was not played. So I think we need to count 9 blunders in total. Aryan, that's right, 9 blunders. Yeah, so, I mean, but most of the blunders, like I said, are same theme. They just didn't realize what diagonal the bishop needs to be in. And that's the reason this kept going back and forth. All right, hopefully that was fun. I really enjoyed this endgame when I saw this. And, you know, hopefully you guys all enjoyed it too. Can I show the starting position? Sure, yeah. I'll go back to the starting position. This one is a starting position.